I'm Louise Pasterfield of Sponge UK. I'm Managing Director, and we're going to be going through Get Gaming in Storyline. So thank you all very much for coming today. It's nice to see a good crowd. Okay, so to begin, before I go into our talk, I just want to tell you a little bit about us and who we are. We specialize in custom-made e-learning courses, and what we do is we work with large organizations, and we take their training and we transform it into engaging e-learning. We make it absorbing. We're called Sponge, and that's the connection. So we do things like, we're called in often to work on things like inductions, sales and product knowledge, compliance, skills development. So that's really what we do. And actually, we work with a wide cross-section of public and private sector organizations, many of whom use Articulate Storyline as one of their tools. Not all, but many do. So that's probably one of the bases for our talk today. So first of all, I want to just cover why this talk on gaming and storyline. Why are we actually doing this? I think the thing is that actually we as a company... Oh, dear. We as a company develop a lot of e-learning in different tools. So we'll use things like HTML5, Adapt, Captivate, Storyline, Lectora. But there's no question about it, Storyline is proving to be very popular with clients, and we hear a lot about it from clients when we go and visit them. And I think the reason for this is it has a lot of good inbuilt interactions. It's reasonably priced if you want to kind of do any work. Clients can update modules. So if we develop a module, they can update it easily afterwards. So that's a bit of security for the client, and they like that. So really what we wanted to do is we wanted to explore what is possible with games in Storyline. And also we recently took on a games developer, and I said to him, hey, I'd like you to put Storyline to the test. So I have to say, this is one of my sort of, my babies. I said, look, you just go off and work on it for a few days and tell me what you think. So this is as a result of our developers, our designers, and our instructional designers looking at games that we can create in Storyline. Now, I also want to mention what this talk is not about. Okay, we are not talking about developing complex, expensive, beautiful games. There are some fantastic game developers out there. They spent years designing games. This really is not what we're talking about in this talk. The question we are answering in this talk is, within the technical confines of Storyline, what games can we create that are relatively inexpensive and quick to develop? Okay, so I just want to position that for everyone so that they know what we're talking about today. Okay. So the four topics we're going to be covering are first of all, what do we mean by games? How do we define them? How can we use game qualities in e-learning? What can you do in Storyline? And there's going to be a demo. And I would actually like to request that if maybe you can think about it, I'd like 3 people to come up and do the games. There are 3 games, so it'd be really nice if I could have 3 volunteers. And you can think about that. When I say it's time for the demo, maybe you can just put your hand up if you're happy to do it. I'll give you a hand if you need it, but it'd be really nice to have someone do it rather than me demo it. And then finally, we want to end up with, well, when is it appropriate to use games? When would it really work well? Okay. The other thing I was just going to say is on your chairs are some evaluation forms. If you're interested in having a copy of these slides after the presentation, you just need to fill in the evaluation form at the end. Write your email address clearly, and we'll get it to you. Okay, so to begin, what does the word game make you think of? So I'd like you just to spend a few seconds just thinking, what springs to mind when you think of a game? Okay, does everyone have something in their head? Good, okay. Well, this is what I thought of. I thought of the World Cup. I mean, it's going on now. I think Brazil and Mexico are playing tonight. And I thought this was a good example of game characteristics. So I'm going to go through game characteristics. I think, first of all, there needs to be an element of challenge. And I think certainly, there is an element of challenge with games. An element of risk. We don't know who's going to win, which team's going to win. Engagement. I think both the players are engaged, and we're actually quite engaged watching them. Entertainment, there's a very high entertainment value. Skill building, the more you do, the better you're going to get. And there's quite a lot of skill being displayed at the World Cup. And sense of competition. So those are really, 6 things that we thought of that really say games to us. But what I would say as well is whether you're just playing a game by yourself, like say solitaire, or you're playing a game like chess with 2 people, or you're in a team game, we found that those sort of 6 things really kind of summarized a lot of game qualities that we find. Okay. So the next thing really is, Okay, well, how does that apply to e-learning? Okay. Now, a word that's bandied about a lot is gamification. So if you read any of the blogs, everyone's always talking about gamification. And really what that's talking about is using elements of games to increase engagement with e-learning. So that's really where it sits. And it really was inspired by video, the entertainment industry, mobile games. That's kind of where it came from originally, but we're now sort of seeing it in e-learning. You're also seeing it on LMSs, you know, where you get badges, that sort of thing, scores. But where it sits is kind of like in that area, sort of badges, scores, leaderboards. That's often what we think of when we think of gamification. Now, a man called Carl Kapp, and you may have heard of him, he's a very well-known instructional designer, introduced this concept of game thinking. And this is probably taking it to another level. And what he says is, approach the design of a learning event from the perspective of learner actions and activities that lead to a meaningful outcome while navigating some sort of a risk. And I think that's actually a really good way of positioning that. So how can we use game thinking in our e-learning? And the key things he said about game thinking is it's action, risk, experience, and learning outcomes. So that's really how he framed game thinking. Okay. So the question really is, whoa, don't know whether or not to wait or not. How can we use game qualities in e-learning? Okay. So if we're going to think like game designers, what can we do? And by thinking of them, we can give e-learning these certain things. I think the first thing is engagement through storytelling, for getting people involved in the story, you personally involved in the story. Through autonomy, people like to explore things on their own. They like the sense of mystery and suspense. There's mastery, that's actually getting more proficient, practicing, repeating tricky challenges. And the fourth is progression. So you actually know how you're doing better, you get scores, badges, levels of achievement. I'm just going to show you 4 examples of what we mean by those in practice. And again, we've looked at different industries to give you some ideas of thinking like a game designer. Okay. The first one is this is really lovely. This is called Zombies Run. I don't know if any of you do any running, but Zombies Run it's an app for your mobile phone. And what happens is you run with it and you get chased by zombies. That's really the idea. And if you want, you can go along and you can help a friend, or you can also pick up items. I mean, this is becoming really popular. There's now like zombie runs in parks, and people are doing it all together. But what it is you're now in a story. You're running away from zombies. So it's this whole idea, and I just think it's a really great example. It's just lots of fun. Okay. The next one is a very famous game, the World of Warcraft. And I'm using this one as an example of autonomy. This has got some fantastic options that you can choose. I mean, if you just look on there, look at all the different things that you can use or play within the game. And it's just so kind of powerful. This one must have taken years to develop. But the thing is that basically you can explore, you can actually choose things that you want to do. And it's an excellent example for that. Okay. Here's another game, probably the most popular game ever. This is actually Space Invaders. And this is all about mastery, doing it again and again and again, and perfecting your score. So this is a good example of that one. And my final example is actually from Audible. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Audible, but it's an online books. And the more that you listen, the more that you can gain actual badges. So in other words, the longer you listen, you can get rewards with badges. So it's a good example of progression. So those are ways that we're thinking like game designers. Okay. Now the question is, what can we do in storyline? And that's what we're going to cover right now. I'm going to go through some things that we found we can do in storyline by giving it to our developers to play with. And then we've developed a game for this talk, so I'm going to need my 3 volunteers, and I'll let you know when that is. Okay, so first of all, e-learning games and storyline are going to be self-contained gamed activities that teach us something. That's really how we define it. And the nice thing about it is it can add variety, it can add a change of pace, you can introduce an element of surprise. I think that the other thing, too, is that, you can think of it as a whole game, or you can just think of elements of games throughout a module, so you can have other pages in between to intersperse it. Okay. So some things that you can do within Storyline for games is you can have branching games. So for example, if someone's a novice or an expert, they can do a different game. So branching is actually a really nice feature within Storyline. You can also improve skills. So you can do things like practice, repeat challenges. You can progress to a new level. So it has this feature where if you do a certain level, you can move on to the next one. So that actually works quite well. Or if you, in this instance, in this example here, you didn't actually find all the hazards in this exercise, there's 3 left, you can quickly go back and redo it again. You can also reward achievements. So here, in this example I'm going to show you in a minute, if you actually achieve a certain number of stars, you get a badge, and you can actually monitor and view your progress. So we link some of the variables with badges. Okay. You can also have time games. So if you have a look at this example here, can you all see the match over there on the right-hand side? You've got so long to answer this question. As the match burns down, if it burns down all the way, you haven't answered the question, you're not going to get any points, but it's a timer. So this here is an example of a time per question, but you can also have time per game. So this game needs to take a minute or 10 minutes, however you want to do it. So that again, is something that works quite well. This one here is actually one of my favorite features. It can do aggregate learner scores. So as you can see, there's like game 1, game 2, game 3 in a module, and it'll do you a total score, and that total score can be exported to your LMS. So if, say, they had to achieve 80 or 90%, that's what gets transferred over to your LMS. That's actually really quite nice. You can also use that with quizzes. So you can get away maybe from the concept of having an assessment at the end of the module. So this is quite a nice thing. You can do assembly activities. In a minute, you're going to see how we're going to assemble an organization chart. But this is based on a kind of a puzzle principle. So you can have like puzzle pieces, and you've pieced them together. And that's some functionality that's built into Storyline that you can use. Okay, and the final one is you can do immersion experiences. And actually, I have to say that probably of them all, this is one of my favorites. And the idea is it kind of gives you a 3D effect, and you can go through and you can explore spaces, you can zoom into spaces, and you can do nice transitions between screens. Okay, so having said all that, I think it's an appropriate time to actually show you one of the games that we've done as demonstrations, what we can do in Storyline. So I am going to need 3 volunteers, and are there any that would be willing to come forward and play a game? Hands up. Thank you. Come on up. And anyone else? We've got 1. We just need 2 more. I was going to ask you because you were right there, and you're also, am I right in thinking you're a content developer, Andrea? So that's good. That'd be really good. And just a 3rd person? Okay, come on up. Come on up. Thank you. So who would like to go first? He would. Okay, come on over. Come on over. Okay, good. Okay, we're going to play the first game, which is unlocked. It's this game here. It is a fire game. So we're gonna open it up, and you want to leave it up for a minute. It's all about snap decisions. So you've got to be able to make decisions quickly. So you're going to be testing your knowledge against the clock in this quick fire game. You look like you're going to do well. I think you're going to do well. Okay, so you're going to click play the game. Let's go for it. Okay. Okay. There's only 4 questions, so you don't have to worry too much. Well done. Isn't he good? Great. That's it. That's right. Yep. He's doing well. He's doing well. Excellent. Excellent. I think he might get a badge, this man. Brilliant. Did you press it? Yep, you did. Brilliant. Great. Okay, what's happened? Let's see. 4 out of 4. Well done. You're the rank of fire. What is your name? Sorry? Travis. Oh, thank you. That's great. And we're going to go back to the menu. Let's have a look at your badge. You did really well. Back to the menu. Great. Excellent. I think a round of applause for Travers. I think he did very well. Thank you very much. Now, I hope you noticed when he played the game, the noises and the sounds, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, we're going to move on to our next game with Andreas. Or do you want to go next? No, whichever. I'll tell you what, the last game's the hardest, so you can choose. Sorry? He'll do the hardest, okay. All right, so if you want to click onto that one there, okay. So this one here, the concept for this one here is you want to turn back the clock. Now, if you go on to the next screen, it'll explain what happens. Okay. So, in this game here, a fire's broken out at your office at midday, and the building is engulfed in flames. But you can go back in time 5 minutes and find all the hazards before the fire breaks out. Okay, so the back in time exercise. That's right. So, if you want to go back in time, and you let it go back, and then you're going to play the game. So, you're going to find the hazards in a minute. Okay, go ahead. That's it. Well done. There's two more. The brick, maybe the car. Right? And the car as well. Yeah, it's blocking it. Yes, that's right. Well done. Okay. Good. Okay, so you want to just go next. That's it. Okay. So you can see this one here, the transitions that you can get and the transition effects. Well done. You're doing well. You're doing very well, Andreas. Yeah, there's... You got it. That's great. Good. Yeah, I think what you want to do is you want to we're going to just go down and we're going to submit the... You made it. Well done. Great. I think you got a badge as well. So we're going to go back to the menu. Thank you. But that's the one there which I thought worked quite nicely with the transitions. Okay. There's the final game. Thank you actually, Andreas, round of applause for Andreas. He also earned a badge. That's brilliant. Okay. Now your name is? Patrick. Okay, Patrick, you've got the most challenging game. This is actually, you're going to be clicking onto that one there. Okay. And this is all about the shape of business. So what's happening is you're going to improve your grasp of the company's structure by putting together the team in order. So let's see what happens. Okay. Okay, so an organization chart has arrived to go up on the office wall, but the pieces have been bundled up during delivery. Show your knowledge of staff structures by arranging these colleagues in the right order. And I might get you started. It was there actually. Yeah. Oh, you're doing well. This is a really tough game, I think. Yeah, see the solution. Go ahead. Well done. I think you did really well. I have to say that I struggled with that too. No badge. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Well, I just thought it was helpful to have a look at the games to see actually what you can actually physically do. So just moving on from there, I just wanted to mention some technical considerations. You've sort of seen the games in action. But if you are thinking of creating games in Storyline or creating anything in Storyline, you do need to bear in mind that it works on desktop PCs, it works on Macs, it works on laptops, it works on iPad, but it'll only work on iPad for games if you download the Storyline app. It doesn't work on tablets and it doesn't work on smartphones. So there are restrictions within the tool. But just to give you an idea, really, that's really where it could work. Okay. We also asked, well, from our developers, we said, well, how easy was it to create the games? And what they said was, it's got a really simple to use timeline feature. It's got simple to use action commands. It's got really good animation functionality. But essentially what they said is if you're going to do things like the immersion game, which we showed you, which involves a lot of zooms, that involves a lot of complexity. Also, if you're going to introduce a lot of badges, stars, and different things like that, that's also going to take a bit of time. So it really depends on how complex you want to make it. But there are some other considerations too about developing games, and I think one of them certainly is creating a good story. So whenever you're sort of doing e-learning, you have to think about what's the story going to be. This one here is a good example. Turn the clock back, so there's a reason to want to do it. You've got 5 minutes. You need to think about appropriate language. This is games, so you need to think about how the language is going to be communicated. You know, I don't know if you saw on some of the slides, but it said things like "phew" and "oh no," and you know, it's game technology. The other thing is there ought to be a sense of urgency, something you might need to do quickly. And also, there's got to be an importance of action. There's got to be a reason to want to do it. Otherwise, the game will fall flat on its face. The other thing is that you really want to think about the graphics and the illustration, whether you're going to use photographs or drawings. They need to be convincing. I found this game on one of the Articulate Storyline forums, and this is an example of how I would suggest not to do it. I got completely taken in by this drawing. I thought, wow, that's so cool. What's going to happen next? I'm going to go into Paris and see what happens. And when I went into Paris, this is what happened. I thought, oh, I feel really disappointed, you know? I thought I was going to have some kind of an experience. So what this is really just a kind of like a chocolate box quiz with a nice picture on the outside, and then you get this on the inside. So if you're going to do graphics and you're going to do illustration or photographs, see it through so there's some kind of a continuous experience. Also, the other thing is, I don't know if you noticed, but when we were going through the games, there were sound effects. Sound effects and music are critical to games. Sound can produce a really powerful emotional reaction. So think about maybe music intros to the game. Think about, you know, when you get something right, what the sound might be. When you get it wrong, what it might be. And if you achieve a reward. So that's actually a very important part. There's been a lot of studies about the psychology of sound in games. So don't miss that trick. Okay, so I think the final thing is when are games appropriate? Okay, so games I would suggest are appropriate when there are real risks and real consequences in the workplace. And I think that's absolutely critical, because if you really want to drive people through a game, there's going to need to be a reason for them to do it. So the 4 I've listed here are if, say, your safety could be threatened. So a fire is a good example of your safety being threatened. It could be a life being threatened. A good example of that would be if, say, you're a nurse and you're doing e-learning and your job is to monitor the correct dosages of drugs. Well, what if you kind of do some games on that, and if you get it wrong, the patient could die. So there's some serious consequences, either to your life or to other people's lives. The other is your job. Say for compliance, your job could be on the line if you don't follow certain procedures, or it could be money. If you're in a sales role, your salary could go up or it could go down. Your finances could be affected. Those are just some that I've noted for risks, but think about what risks are going to be involved, risks and consequences. Okay. And finally, I just want to finish with this little piece here, which is how are you going to use games? Ian Bogost, who's a very famous game developer, said, use games which enable people to practice skills they need in the workplace. But he went on to say, deepen the taste of broccoli rather than covering it in chocolate, by which he means really understand what's happening in the workplace, understand the nuances, understand the complexity, and build a game with that in mind, rather than just making it look pretty or tasting good. So I just thought that was a really nice way to finish a thought on games. So I guess in summary, really, gamification and game thinking can enrich e-learning experiences. By engaging like game designers, we can add things like engagement, autonomy, mastery, progression. Those are key points in game thinking. What I saw, or what I hope we demonstrated through our storyline example, is you can have different levels of games, you can have time games, you can do aggregate scoring, you can do assembly and immersion games. So I hope I've given you some food for thought on the way it can be used. But bear in mind, the tool is not enough. Much like Word, we all have Word on our computers. It doesn't mean you can write a novel. So you need to have a good story, you need to have good design, you need, you know, sound and music. They all play a key part in the success of the game. Remember to choose game topics or think about game topics where there are real risks and real consequences. And finally, remember, use games to enable learners to practice skills that they need in the workplace. So that really concludes my talk. If you want to talk to us some more, we're on stand 23, which is kind of right behind you. There's a big orange sponge stand there. And if anyone would be interested in having this presentation, please do fill in your evaluation form, and we'll make sure we get it to you shortly. Thank you very much for your time.